So, welcome to Bitesize Edge, and another podcast coming up for you now. And I have the absolute pleasure of spending some time chatting to a very good friend, Serap. How are you doing, Serap?
Really good, thank you. Really good. How are you?
All right, thank you. All right in these crazy times. So, I was trying to work out how long ago we met. So, we met actually through Jules doing Reiki 1 with you, and then recommending that I did my Reiki 2 with you. Is that right?
Yep.
How long ago was that?
Oh, probably about, I think it's about 3 or 4 years.
Wow, gosh.
I think it's, probably around 3 or 4 years.
About 3 or 4 years, okay. And at that stage, you were mainly focusing on Reiki and other forms of healing?
Yeah, at that point, I was primarily teaching Reiki to master level and hands-on healing and also meditation. They were kind of my focus areas at that time. But as with any of these kind of healing arts, there's always kind of stuff in the background and on the side that's piquing your interest, and it's sort of a lifelong passion for me. So, yeah.
So what started it off for you? Because you also work in almost like a corporate arena in many ways, don't you? As another business, you've got your foot in another camp as well. So what came first?
So what came first? That's really interesting. So I suppose my whole life I've always been in and out of what you might call normal kind of jobs, corporate world, or working for myself and running my own business, very much sort of trading or commerce based. And it was really through illness, actually. I had some back problems. I had quite a lot of upheaval in my life. I was living abroad, I came back, and without going into the whole lot, it sort of left me questioning healing, how we get to where we get to, what contributes to that. And so I started sort of really on a quest for kind of searching and learning a bit more about myself. And I sort of started with traditional methods like, cognitive-based therapies and exploring meditation. And through a kind of a friend of a friend, I went to see a healer. And at the time, I didn't really realise he was a very powerful healer. I just thought he was kind of this osteopath, craniosacral, had all these qualifications as well. And but my friend said every time she went to see him, she didn't really know what he did, but she came away feeling amazing. So I thought, right, well, I'm definitely going to him. And so I went to see him because I had herniated a disc in my lumbar spine. Wow. And it was just taking months and months to heal. And kind of the traditional routes weren't really helping. It wasn't really curing anything. And so the first session I went to, he kind of sort of placed his hands around my the lower back, and without sort of doing any manipulation and the classic kind of things that you might expect if you went to a chiropractor or an osteopath, I started to feel all these things happening in my body that I really had no idea what they were. And it was, I guess, my first sort of real direct experience of my energy body. And from that moment, I went back to see him regularly and had really profound healing that happened as a result of it. And it kind of opened Pandora's box. And I became then curious about the non-physical. And looking back, when I look back perhaps on childhood, there was always an interest. I look back at some of the books I might have read, some of the interests I might have had. And there was always that kind of element there, wanting more exploration, but it kind of, life was the catalyst, I guess, and really suffering was the catalyst.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because, a little bit like you, my world, up until I moved into the world of NLP, or discovered the world of NLP, for want of a better phrase, was all very corporate, very commercial, very driven by end results, very fact orientated, real clear timeline and objectives. And then I kind of stumbled into NLP. And I think the moment where it went from going, oh my God, this is quite cool and I can use this in the corporate world, to going, no, this is something much deeper, was when I did something known as timeline therapy. And I had a real awareness to an emotional response that had been suppressed for 30, 40 years. And I kind of went, shit, that's powerful stuff. And if that can come through, then what else are we as individuals, at that, for me, the emotional and energetic level, capable of doing?
Yeah.
And my journey, like yours and different to yours, has just changed on the back of that, which is quite phenomenal.
Yeah.
So from that moment, that awakening, so kind of, why Reiki?
So from that kind of moment, I went through this period of, it was quite a challenging time actually, because it was bringing a lot of stuff up. It was kind of tapping into, in a lot of the energy healing circles, and really in the world of the unseen, we talk about how there's always a spiritual or an energy content to everything. There's an emotional content. There's layers and layers that we carry through this life and, other lives, if you believe in that. And so it kind of just made me question everything about what I was doing. And so I decided, where could I start? I obviously started reading loads of books, and I discovered that I had a teacher, a Reiki teacher, who actually lived down the road. And he taught Reiki and quantum touch.
Oh.
And so I just decided that I had the opportunity to do it. So I packed in my job as kind of an office manager, again, very much in the normal world, and decided to learn Reiki and quantum touch. And they were absolutely life-changing, really powerful catalysts for me, and sort of set me on the path of exploration, really, and how far we could go with healing.
Okay. Quantum touch.
Yeah.
Sounds fabulous, doesn't it, just saying it?
It does.
Tell me about quantum touch.
So quantum touch is, again, another form of energy healing. And with quantum touch, it's really about using breathing techniques to tap into and amplify really the natural healing energy, chi, life force, right, that's all around us. Mm. And so through breathing techniques, we channel direct that energy either towards ourselves or to others, and that can be done hands-on, or it can be done remotely. So I think, I'm just trying to think which way round it was. I think I learned quantum touch first, and then I did my first levels of Reiki, and then I took it to the master teacher level. With Reiki, it's slightly different in that there's a process of being connected to the energy in a slightly different way. But both modalities are accessible for everybody.
Excellent. Thank you. I was just having a little bit of coughing fit while I muted myself. So when you work with someone on a one-to-one basis, you combine all of these things as part of your kind of healing experience.
Yeah.
So tell me now about a subject which I love, because you and I, 2 years ago.
Yeah, God, can't believe it's 2 years.
Went and did a introduction weekend to shamanism. Is that how I heard it?
Yeah.
So I came away from that weekend. In fact, we talked all the way through that weekend and our journeys there and back about how surreal it was, how incredible it was, how, well, in fact, I could never find words to completely describe what I think I went through. And I struggled when I came home to really describe it without it probably sounding a little bit like I was taking the mick out of it. When I wasn't, I was just kind of going, oh my God, you won't believe what I've experienced. Well, you've taken it to a whole new level now, haven't you? So you're on halfway through. Are you halfway through?
Yeah, I'm probably coming up to halfway through a 3-year shamanic practitioner training program with the same people that we did the introductory weekend with. So
Serap, if you were going to describe in a sentence that people listening to this podcast will go, oh, I get it. What is it?
What is it?
What is shamanism?
It's really interesting because if you Google it, you get so many different similar but different explanations of what shamanism is. And I'm not sure whether, sorry, I can sum it up in one sentence, but shamanism is probably one of the oldest traditions, ways of living. So it's not just, whilst it is a practice, it's a way of living. Most people will probably have heard of shamanism or shamans in the context of indigenous tribes, and communities where they're much more in touch with nature. So shamanism at its core is about connecting to nature, to the spirit of all things. So in shamanism, everything carries a spirit, and in working together with nature, each other, our ancestors, the earth, to bring about harmony and balance. And yeah, I think that's probably the shortest version I can give you.
But I mean, when I spoke to a couple of people about I was going on that weekend and subsequently went on that weekend, it was a mixed bag of people going, oh, wow, tell me more, or other people going, isn't that kind of like the black art? Isn't that just, everything not good? There was a big old spectrum, wasn't there? So what was it about that incredible weekend that we did that kind of got you to a place, Serap, where you went, I want to do more. I'm going to do the practitioner course.
I think primarily, for me, shamanism has become a way to really deepen my connection to myself and all aspects of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And in shamanism, we talk a lot about wholeness and sovereignty, and finding our true sovereign self in all aspects of who we are. And in the practices that we did on that weekend through journeying and going into shamanic consciousness, we are able to connect with much, much deeper levels of our own essence, the universe, spirit, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was really looking for. And hence, with the Reiki and the quantum touch and the other practices that I have, they're all wonderful and amazing, and I still work with them and use them. But I just wanted to go deeper with my journey, and that seemed to be sort of the kind of eureka moment. This is how I can do it. This is really going to be excavating and exploring the infinity of ourselves and consciousness.
So two things there into mind for me. The word wholeness, I get. Sovereignty. A really interesting word, sovereignty. So in the context of a being, you or me, what do we mean? What do you mean by sovereignty? How would I engage with that word?
Again, that's a really interesting question, Pip, because when it first came up, I wasn't really sure what sovereignty meant, and I kind of had to sit down and pick it apart a little bit and work out, what does that mean to me? Obviously, the word sovereign is kind of, for many people, brings up the idea of royalty or a crown, if you like, a sovereign. And so I suppose in some ways it's about sitting on, I'm going to use a metaphor here, but sitting on your royal crown and being the queen or king that you are. And again, it's very much for me about embracing wholeness and the true essence of who we really are beyond that, and all of that coming together as one thing that we are, and not giving that away and not kind of disowning parts of that or pushing parts of that away. All of that is who we are. The parts that we might not like so much and the parts that we might call great, but all of that sits alongside our true essence, and all of that is the sovereign self. And there probably get lots of different answers to that question, because I think it's very much a personal journey rather than something that I could define for everyone.
I get what you're saying now. It's that works for me. Another question, another phrase that you used, and without needing to go into the detail, I'll let you decide how far you want to go with that one. But you said about excavating.
Yeah.
Brilliant descriptive word. I'm kind of going, I've kind of seen this kind of, clawing away at yourself, but equally excavating. So the two analogies for me are kind of excavating is in clawing your way out of things or at things, but equally the subtlety and elegance of excavating an old Roman find. So it's it's got such a descriptive to it. Where is it for you? And you say excavating, was it pleasant?
Oh, well, that's also pleasant. So I suppose excavation or excavating, you know, at the end of it, we find treasure. But to get there, sometimes it's tough. It's hard work. We've got to go through quite a few layers to get to that place. And so, yeah, I'm not sure I'd say it was all pleasurable, but all necessary and part of the process. And I think the shamanic journey has really taught me just to have faith and keep trusting, because every bit of digging and excavating I do, and when I say excavating, I suppose I'm looking at, you know, every aspect of self, the good parts, the bad parts, the bits that we've buried, the bits that, you know, we don't want to show to the world, the bits that we're told not to show to the world, you know, on all different levels, emotional, mental, physical. And so it's looking at, in a very deep way, all of those parts and how they contribute to, you know, how our life is and how we experience life. And so, yeah, the excavation process continues. And I'm not sure, I may be wrong, but I'm not sure if there's ever a point that we get to where, you know, everything in the garden is done, everything looks pretty and planted and great, because I think it's cycles as well. And so yeah, we get to a certain point and then, oh, time to dig again, time to plant more seeds.
So do you think this one of the things this brings you is that extra kind of level of heightened awareness of, if I think about my days at the moment, I'm lucky that I'm able to work from home. It is a different environment, not working from home, but it's a different environment working with people remotely. I spend a lot of time doing what I'm doing now, which is talking to people via Zoom. And I get to the end of the day and I've kind of gravitated at this level, doing what I need to do. And there's moments of going, oh, this is a challenge. It's very difficult for the individual I'm talking to, or whatever it might be. But I don't get to the end of the day having dropped deep into something and had that moment of awareness. Do you just have a heightened, I mean, I deem myself as having quite a good level of self-awareness, but do you have a heightened level of awareness, do you think?
I suppose I try as much as possible to, so my day contains lots of pockets of practices that help ground me back into awareness. So equally, I might get lost in my computer and doing, you know, boring bog standard account stuff or whatever. But I guess, yes, I do have a quite a good level of awareness, simply because I know that it's one of the things that keeps me well, keeps me sane, and therefore I notice much more easily when I've perhaps slipped out of that, and perhaps that's one of the advantages. And the practices, so with shamanic work and also with the mindfulness and the meditation, there's ritual, there's ceremony involved, whether that's sitting in meditation or whether that's using a drum or a rattle to just drop into a deeper state rather than the operating state that we're at when we're doing working in the way that we're so used to. Does that kind of answer it?
Yeah, it does absolutely. And you tied it kind of back into the Reiki and the mindfulness and bits and pieces with that. How are you going to use all of this with your clients moving forward?
So it's interesting because at the moment, obviously, we're in a bit of a limbo period, and any forms of kind of hands-on work or groups and workshops at the moment for me are kind of just sitting in the background. But ultimately, because the journey's become about finding myself, and along the way, finding more acceptance, more love, more well-being, learning how I can tap into my own innate resources for healing, and a wealth of other things that come when you connect at the deeper levels. So I love learning, and so in an ideal world, I just love to be sharing what I've learned and how it's helped me, so that whoever I'm with, can take on board the bits that resonate for them where they're at now, and start to forge their own journey into finding themselves and being whole. And I mean, honestly, the spiritual practices that I've been involved in as a result of some of these modalities and learning they're just such a foundation to enable me to actually cope with, you know, the stuff that life throws your way, like this current situation now. A lot of the work that I've done has really helped me to just stay in a state of acceptance as much as possible, and least resistance, and open to, you know, whatever I can do, and accepting of what I can't. So I guess I just really want people to have access to this innate resilience and massive source of power, personal power, that we all have.
Fabulous. So true though, Serap, isn't it? So true. We can so easily get caught up in what's going on, and lose sight of the bits that we control, the bits that we can influence, and the bits that we own in so many ways. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the current circumstances are mind-blowing if you sit and think about the severity of it. I think when there's a couple of times during the last few weeks that in fact the first time was when 8 o'clock on Thursday evening, the first time when we went out to clap for the NHS. And the first time we did it, I got really emotional, and it was the magnitude of what's going on, but also driven by the magnitude of a whole, you know, the country hopefully standing outside doing this. Go back a couple of months, most towns, streets wouldn't bloody speak to each other, and here we are. The common goal, common cause, to kind of thank these people who are just, you know, risking their lives every single moment in order to save ours. And I had that moment of, this is so big from that. And then it's about taking control again and going, okay, I can't alter that. I can stay at home. That's my bit of altering it. I can stay at home, help support others as I can, but let me focus on what I can do, which will influence my world day by day. And I think that's really key, isn't it? Recognizing those resources. Otherwise, I think we become completely overwhelmed with what's going on around us.
Absolutely. And I think it's very much like you on that first evening of the clapping. I was sort of standing at my window, and it was so emotional. And that sense of community that, you know, we are missing. We need to get back. It was just as a kind of side effect of what's going on. There's so many amazing things coming out of this. If we could just use those to kind of to forward a new way of doing things, perhaps, okay, I'm going to leave that behind.
And also take energy from those things, I think, isn't it? I talked this morning, I did a Facebook Live, and I talked about small wins. You know, recognise the small wins, whatever it might be. Recognise the small win, because it changes the energy, changes the flow for you. Definitely. So Serap, you do Reiki, you do mindfulness. You're soon to be a shamanic practitioner, or what's the right title? Practitioner?
Shamanic practitioner.
Excellent. So how can people listening to this podcast find you? Because I've done my level 2 and 3 with you, haven't I, Reiki?
You've done your master, yes.
I've done my masters.
You have. Jules has as well, I think, hasn't she?
Jules has done 1 and 2. Has she done her masters yet? Not sure. If she hasn't, we'll, you know, get that sorted. Or she might have done. How do people? And I found it fabulous. I found the experience of working with you fabulous. How can people find you so they find out the services that you offer?
The usual way. Go onto Google and find me on my website, which is www.innatehealing.co.uk, or I'm on Facebook, again, Innate Healing. Also on Instagram, surprise, surprise, at Innate Healing. And you can find me on any of those ways, or just look me up on fabulous Facebook.
Brilliant. Thank you, Serap. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much.
I can't wait for you to be involved in your training, and to be one of your, I'm not sure what you want to call me, but I'll be one of those people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. And for those of you listening, you can listen to this podcast and many others on Spotify. Our channel is Bitesize Edge, and you can also find us on iTunes. I nearly said YouTunes, but I mean in this case iTunes. So thank you very much, and speak to you all soon.